Hi, it's Mo. It is getting towards the end of the year, and I wanted to do a video about the DNFs that I've had this year, just generally. Also, I'm running out of space on my red shelf, which you can't see, it's up here. Every year since starting BookTube, what I've done is the books that I've read throughout the year, I keep on this shelf up here, and there's a even further one up there that I keep project books on, DNFs on, and this year the books that I've read are spilling over to that shelf. So throughout the whole year, all the books that I've read physically I put on that shelf, and then at the end of the year, well really at the beginning of the next year, I do a keep or toss video where I go through all the books that I've read physically through the year, and I decide whether I want to put them on my actual shelves, my like forever bookshelves, or if I want to give them to little free libraries or donate them or give them to friends or give them back to the people that they're supposed to be with, because sometimes they are borrowed books up there. This year I've read so many books. I just read my 150th book, so I need more space. So I wanted to go through my DNFs, which are taking up like half of a shelf, talk about them, show you the DNFs that I've had this year, show you some DNFs that were on that shelf from previous years, and decide whether I want to get rid of them now, whether I want to hold on to them for that keep or toss video, or whether I can put them back on my TBR shelf, whatever they happen to be. I'm going to start with the books that I DNF'd previous to 2023, and I'm going to start with The Artist's Way. This is a workbook and philosophy book on how to be an artist. This is where Morning Pages came from a few years ago. I was reading this and I tried Morning Pages for 30 days. I will leave that video listed down below. It also is about taking artist date with yourself and doing various things to spur and inspire your creativity. So this is an interesting one. It's definitely a little bit more like self-help philosophy than I was hoping it was, and that's partly why I never went on and read it, and also because it is a workbook as well as just a reading book. It really does want you to do the exercises before you move on to the rest of the book, so I never finished it. I only really got like a quarter of the way through. So this is one I definitely would like to revisit, but this is one that I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I'm gonna have to take a look at it and see if it needs to go back on my TBR, or if it just can go on like my reference book shelves, or if it should stay on my DNF shelf. The next book I started in February of 2022. This is Begin Again, James Baldwin, America and Its Urgent Lessons for Our Own. It's by Eddie S. Glaude Jr. I've recently got another book by him, another nonfiction book by him. I am feeling a little bit more urgency to get back to this one. I was really enjoying this one. I got about a quarter of the way through and I was really liking it. I read it in Black History Month in 2022, but I think I was reading another nonfiction at the same time and I was getting them confused, so I wanted to put this one on pause. This is one that I think about going back to a lot, but I haven't yet. I think what I'm going to do with this one is go ahead and put it back on my TBR and hopefully get to this in 2024. The next book I started around the same time, February of 2022, and this is Here Comes the Sun by Nicole Dennis Benn. This is a novel taking place in Jamaica about two sisters and their mom, various things that happen. I got about halfway through this one. I was really having a hard time with this one. I'm not sure why. Because of the writing style, because of the dialect that was used. It's written partly in Jamaican patois, which is a little bit hard for me to read, although I have read a collection of poetry in Jamaican patois since then, so maybe it would be easier for me. I also think that it just was depressing. It was just like a really depressing book. But now that I am able to get books out of the library, maybe I'll check my library apps and see if they have this. In January every year, I like to go through and read a couple of DNFs from the previous year or from previous years. So I think these are both contenders for that in 2024. The next DNF that I have on this shelf, I think I actually started reading in 2021. It is Ball 4 by Jim Bouton. This is a epistolary nonfiction, all in diary entries of Jim Bouton's time getting into the big leagues, returning to the big leagues, and and it was really fascinating. It's just a real chunker, and it was a little bit repetitive. I think I only got about a quarter of the way through when I was reading it. I would like to come back to this one day, but I'm not super excited to get to it right now, so I'm gonna put this one back on my baseball book shelf. When I come back to it, I come back to it. And then last of the old DNFs, I have The Salmon of Doubt by Douglas Adams. This is Hitchhiking the Galaxy One Last Time, and this is a book of essays, stories, partial stories that were collected posthumously after the author died. It has some snippets of books that might have been Hitchhiker's books, that might have been Dirk Gently books. It has some interviews. It has some essays that he wrote, some articles. It has some speeches, and I read part of it, I think way back in 2020, maybe 2021, for a readathon video, and I've had this one forever. It came off of my red shelves, like my forever red shelves, and I'm gonna put it back on there in my collection of Douglas Adams. Douglas Adams is one of my all-time favorite authors, and I'm not gonna get to this one anytime soon, but there's no rush to get to it, so it can just go back on that shelf with my collection. On to the books that I DNF'd this year. One that I've already talked about is Wisteria Cottage by Robert M. Coates. I started reading this in 2022, and then I picked it up again in summer of 2023, and then in fall of 2023 I officially re-DNF'd it. I got about halfway through this one. It's just very slow. It's a classic psychological horror from the 1930s or 40s, 1948. I was enjoying it when I was reading it, but because it was so slow, because it was repetitive, and because it was very anxiety provoking, I could only read it for 10, 15 pages at a time, and then I would put it down. And I just have things that I would rather be reading than this. So I'm gonna keep this one on my DNF shelf because I did get quite a bit far into it, and I feel like this is one that I'm either going to pick back up and just finish one day, or I'm gonna unhaul. Next, we have Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. I read Transcendent Kingdom by Yaa Gyasi last year and I really enjoyed it. So I had Homegoing on my TBR previous to finding that book. But this one is a historical fiction. It's long generational tale of sisters, and that's just not things that I'm interested in. I do like Yaa Gyasi's writing. I think I would rather read either a more contained historical story by her or contemporary story by her. So this one I am going to be unhauling. Oh, I meant to say, with Homegoing, I think I probably only got one chapter in. I did this for a try chapter and I wasn't super interested in it. Nowadays, when I do a try chapter, I just unhaul them. This one I kind of counted as a DNF. Definitely unhauling. Another book that I DNF'd this year is The Quantum Thief by Hanu Rajaniemi. This is a sci-fi, steampunky heist book, I guess. I read the first chapter of this in a try chapter. I'll try to remember which one and leave that video linked down below, but I was pretty interested in it. I was intrigued by the first chapter. The first chapter starts out with, I believe, our main character kind of in a deadly game, which seems like it's maybe a training game or something. As soon as I started reading it a little further in, which I only got to page 9, I realized that this one really wasn't for me. It's a little bit too fantasy, a little bit too, I don't know, made up words and languages that you have to understand, and it was a little bit confusing, and so this one is going to be an unhaul. In April of 2023, I did a video where I read books for opening day of the baseball season in 2023, and one of the books that I had picked up was John Feinstein's The Change Up. This is a Mystery at the World series, and this is part of a mystery series. It's YA, I would say, although the characters in this are younger teenagers. I think they're 15 or 16. And this one I got about a quarter of the way through. It follows our two main characters who are young teenagers who want to be journalists and who have gone through other adventures, all revolving around sports. They want to be sports journalists. So in this book, there is a murder at the World Series, and they're there with their press passes, but they end up getting getting entangled in the murder and they have to solve it. So this sounded cool. I mean, it's definitely very dated. I think it was written in like the early 90s or maybe early 2000s. Oh, 2009. It's definitely dated, and I really didn't like the direction that the two main characters who are dating was taking, and I just didn't drive that much with the writing style and everything. And of course, like, I'm not a YA reader, I'm not a middle grade reader, so this one is definitely getting unhauled. That was a fun video to make though, and I did read other books for it. I will list that one down below, and I would check it out if you're interested in a baseball related vlog. Next up, I have The No. 2 Feline Detective Agency by Mandy Morton. This was blurbed by P.D. James, which was a plus, and I got this book from a used online bookstore in early 2022 or even 2021 to go along with my cat cozy mystery vlogs, reading vlogs that I do, and reading project that I have going on. And I did start reading this one. I like this cover, but there's another cover that I like even better. I got about 1/8 of the way through. I only made it to page 37. This is about cats who are detectives, so it's like a world of animals and talking animals and cats, and I just really was not interested in the story that much, and I really didn't like, well, that's not true. I was interested in the story a little bit because it's about cats who are being killed at like a cat old age home. So there were some interesting ideas in this book, but I didn't like the way it was written, and I didn't like the whole talking cat thing. I think for my cat cozy mysteries, I'm not like a truly talking cat person. Like, I'm all about cats who help their detectives and who have input, and maybe who even talk in their own minds, like we hear their thought process. But I don't think I'm into like the whole world are cats. And there was a lot of weird like plot holes I felt like in this one that I thought was strange. I don't know. I think I'm going to leave this one on my DNF shelf for now, because maybe this is a time and a place kind of book. Like, if I'm in the mood for a super whimsical, silly cat cozy mystery, this one might come back. And the last book that I DNF so far in 2023 is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. This is such a beautiful cover with the foiling and everything, and I was excited to try this one. I tried this one twice. I read the first chapter in a try-a chapter, and it was intriguing. And then I tried listening to it on audio, and I think I only got a few chapters in before I realized that this one just really isn't for me. I don't love historical fictions generally, and I've realized that I really don't love like puritanical historical fictions. Those are just not interesting to me. I'm a little bit worried about the bone houses, which I have, and I need to read for my 20 books I found out in 2020, because I think that one has a similar vibe to this one. Maybe a little bit more sci-fi. Like I said, I tried it, but this one just wasn't for me, and I realized that the tropes that are involved and the settings that are involved, I'm just really not interested in. So this one I am definitely going to unhaul. So those are all the DNFs that I've had so far in 2023. Any other DNFs that I have for the last month or so of the year, you can probably see in that keep or toss video. So keep your eyes posted for that one. So the 4 books that I will be unhauling from my DNFs right now are these. And the 3 that are probably going back on my DNF shelf are these. 2 are going back on their respective shelves, my forever shelf and my baseball shelf. And then 2, I think I'm going to kind of put back on my TBR, but try to read them in January 2024 for my wrapping up DNFs projects. So I think that's pretty good. I very much narrowed down the DNFs that I have right now, and I think that will give me a lot more room on my shelves going forward, which I desperately need. So let me know if you DNF books. Let me know approximately how many books you DNF a year. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.